The launch of the Hasselblad X2D II, commonly nicknamed the X2D II, has stirred plenty of conversation among photographers, collectors, and camera enthusiasts. The name might sound like something lifted straight from the Star Wars universe, but the device itself is firmly grounded in the real world of professional photography. This medium-format machine has been eagerly awaited as the follow-up to the well-regarded Hasselblad X2D. Having had the opportunity to test the new camera over a couple of months, I want to share an honest assessment of its strengths, weaknesses, and overall value. Is this simply a polished refresh or a worthy upgrade that can genuinely transform your workflow? Alongside the camera body, I will also discuss the brand new 35 to 100mm zoom lens, which promises to be a versatile companion for many travel and landscape photographers. Rather than echoing marketing claims, I prefer to evaluate manufacturer promises against real-world experience. That means highlighting where Hasselblad has delivered but also pointing out where the company still falls short. Some of these observations may please Hasselblad, while others may sting, but honesty is far more useful for photographers considering whether to invest in a system that costs thousands of dollars. Autofocus, a real breakthrough. One of the most notable updates in the X2D II is the addition of continuous autofocus. At first glance, this may not seem revolutionary, but in practice it is a game changer. The previous X2D offered respectable autofocus for stationary subjects but was never particularly capable when dealing with moving targets. During my testing, I experimented by photographing my wife, or cats, and even a squirrel darting across the backyard. The new autofocus system tracked subjects with surprising confidence. Eye tracking was consistently accurate, and the viewfinder gave clear, real-time feedback on subject lock. Instead of hunting or stuttering, the system smoothly followed motion. This change alone makes the X2D to feel more versatile. Portrait photographers, event shooters, and anyone capturing action will find this to be a significant step forward compared with the older model. For the first time, Hasselblad's medium-format cameras feel like a realistic option for dynamic work rather than being confined to slow, contemplative styles of photography. HDR. A modern take on an old idea. Hasselblad has also emphasized its new HDR pipeline. Initially, I dismissed this as another overblown buzzword. After all, many photographers still remember the garish HDR craze of the early 2000s, when poorly blended exposures resulted in surreal and natural images. But Hasselblad's approach is entirely different. The X2D II is designed for integration with modern HDR displays, the kind now found in televisions, laptops, tablets, and smartphones. When images are viewed on these displays, the highlights appear more radiant, contrast is stronger, and the sense of depth is striking. This isn't about blending multiple exposures. Instead, it's about producing and presenting files that align with the expanding capabilities of modern screens. I must admit that I had underestimated this technology until I studied the work of educator Greg Benz, who explains how HDR imaging translates into practical photographic benefits. The X2D II is built to capture HDR files, preview them directly on its HDR-capable electronic viewfinder and rear screen, and process them in Hasselblad's Focus Mobile 2 app without breaking the HDR chain. There are some frustrations, though. Focus Mobile 2 is currently limited to Apple devices, which excludes Android users. Even if it were available, editing a 100-megapixel file on a phone screen doesn't appeal to me. Hasselblad's Focus desktop software also remains less polished than other industry standard tools, making it unlikely that many professionals will abandon their current workflow. The HDR potential is exciting, but it needs better support and broader education before it becomes mainstream. Tilt screen. A helpful refinement camera introduces a two-way tilt touchscreen. While it may sound like a small change, in the field it makes a noticeable difference. When working at low angles, I no longer had to crouch uncomfortably or press my face into the dirt to see the screen. Compared to the single tilt mechanism of the X2D, the new screen is more flexible and intuitive. It isn't enough on its own to justify an upgrade, but for photographers who often shoot from awkward positions, this kind of thoughtful design improvement makes day-to-day use more enjoyable and efficient. Image stabilization. Not quite as promised. Hasselblad claims that the X2D II offers 5-axis stabilization with up to 10 stops of compensation. In reality, my results fell short of that ambitious figure. Other photographers online have posted examples of sharp handheld exposures lasting 2 or 3 seconds. In my tests, the best I could consistently achieve was around 0.6 seconds. That is still an improvement over the older X2D, but it isn't nearly as dramatic as advertised. Perhaps the pre-production unit I used lacked final firmware, or perhaps the conditions were different, but for now, I describe stabilization as good rather than exceptional. This is an area worth revisiting once more photographers get their hands on production models. Storage, still a strong point. The internal 1TB SSD carries over from the X2D and remains one of the system's best features. It is fast, reliable, and spacious, reducing the need to constantly swap cards in the field. Of course, CAF Express Type B cards are still supported, but the integrated drive is a welcome safeguard for long shoots and extensive travel. Design. Elegant but with a quirk. Hasselblad cameras are known for their aesthetic appeal, and the X2D II maintains that tradition with sleek, minimal lines. In hand, it feels like a premium object. However, one detail stands out: the grip's textured finish. Functionally, it is excellent, secure, and comfortable to hold, but visually, it resembles the fox leather found on old guitar amplifiers. It feels somewhat plasticky compared to the rest of the camera's refined build. While this is a minor aesthetic complaint, I had hoped for a grip that looked as luxurious as it felt. Joystick and customization. The addition of a joystick and extra custom buttons is another small but meaningful refinement. The joystick is particularly welcome. On previous models, checking focus through the VF often meant fumbling with the touchscreen, which could result in accidental nose inputs. The joystick makes this process much smoother and more accurate. The custom buttons, though limited in number, allow photographers to adapt the camera to their preferences. These updates may not make headlines, but they improve the everyday shooting experience. Should current owners upgrade? For current X2D owners, the big question is whether the X2D II represents a worthwhile upgrade. For dedicated landscape photographers, the answer is probably no. The improvements are genuine but incremental. Continuous autofocus, HDR workflow, and a better tilt screen are valuable, yet they do not radically alter the experience of photographing static subjects. This highlights a broader issue in the camera industry. Manufacturers often release modest, step-by-step updates rather than bold leaps. Personally, I prefer to wait 2 or 3 generations before upgrading, when the cumulative changes justify the expense. However, for newcomers to medium format, the X2D II is a highly attractive option. It combines exceptional image quality with practical refinements and delivers an inspiring shooting experience. For anyone buying into the Hasselblad ecosystem for the first time, this model represents one of the most compelling entry points available. Curious pricing. While browsing online retailers, I noticed that the brand new X2D II was priced at around $7,400, while the older X2D was listed higher. That may seem backwards, but the explanation likely lies in availability. The older model can be shipped immediately, while the new one is backordered. Still, it is striking to see a newer model listed for less than its predecessor. Camera pricing often reflects supply chains and demand as much as product merit. The video conundrum: missing feature remains frustrating: video recording. The X2D II is built around an extraordinary sensor and world-class lenses, yet it cannot capture video. In an era when hybrid shooting is the norm, this feels like a missed opportunity. I understand that some purists believe Hasselblad should focus solely on still photography. Yet there is an easy compromise: offer video capability as an optional firmware upgrade. This would allow photographers who want nothing but stills to keep their menu uncluttered, while those who wish to capture cinematic footage could unlock the feature. With so many competitors already offering video alongside stills, Hasselblad risks alienating creatives who want flexibility from their investment. The 35 to 100mm zoom lens alongside the camera, Hasselblad released the new 35 to 100mm zoom lens. For many photographers, this is a near-perfect companion to the 20 to 35mm wide-angle zoom. Together, they provide a range that can replace multiple primes, offering both convenience and versatility. I was particularly interested in whether the new zoom could match the character and background blur of Hasselblad's primes. In side-by-side comparisons at 80mm f4, the results were surprisingly close. The zoom produced smooth, pleasing bokeh that was almost indistinguishable from the prime lens. For most practical purposes, the difference would not matter. During a recent trip to Iceland, the lens proved to be a workhorse. It handled landscapes, portraits, and low-light conditions with equal ease. While heavier than carrying a couple of primes, the convenience of a single lens covering multiple focal lengths is hard to ignore. For travel photographers in particular, this zoom is an invaluable addition to the lineup. Final thoughts: the Hasselblad X2D II is an undeniably beautiful camera that delivers exceptional results. It represents a careful refinement of the X2D rather than a radical overhaul. For existing owners, the case for upgrading is not overwhelming unless autofocus or HD are as critical to their workflow. For new buyers entering medium format for the first time, however, it stands as one of the best choices available. The camera industry's reliance on incremental upgrades can be frustrating, but small refinements still matter. The X2D II is not perfect, it lacks video, its software feels limited, and stabilization may not live up to every claim, but it consistently inspires creativity and confidence. If you value the highest image quality and are prepared to invest in medium format, the X2D II will not disappoint. Just don't expect it to revolutionize your photography if you are already shooting with the original X2D.